Good afternoon and welcome to the Buckinghamshire Business First Talking Heads podcast. My name is Victoria Brocklesby and I am Chief Operating Officer and co-founder at Origin Doors and Windows, and also sit as a non-exec board member at Buckinghamshire Business First. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Gary Grant to the Talking Heads podcast, founder of the UK's best loved toy shop, The Entertainer. Welcome, Gary. Gary, along with his wife Catherine, founded the Entertainer Toy Shops in 1981. The first store was opened in Amersham in Buckinghamshire, and the Entertainer has grown significantly since then and now is the UK's largest chain of toy shops, with over 160 toy shops in the UK, 30 franchise stores internationally, and branded concessions in over 900 Tesco stores. Gary, I've followed you and the Entertainer for many years, firstly as a child, and always enjoying trips there with my mother and father, and now as a parent with my own children. Also from a business perspective, since being part of Origin for the last 20 plus years, I have an appreciation of what it takes to build a brand. And really, the nationwide and international business that you've built is really quite inspiring. More recently, being part of BBF and understanding the importance of our local economy in Bucks, and how our businesses are the backbone of the economy. And I can't wait to find out more about how you've built the Entertainer and where you think you're going next. So Gary, please, I'd love to hear you share the story of the founding of the Entertainer and how it's grown into a successful homegrown and international brand.
Well, thank you for allowing me to tell my story. So my story goes right the way back to 1981. And when I left school, I started to work in a bicycle shop in Amersham. To cut a very long story short, I lost my job in January 1981. I had a little business going on the side, and my business and working for somebody else, they collided. So I needed a full-time job. I'd been married for 3 years at the time, and a toy shop came on the market in Amersham. And with the money that we'd earned for being involved with the skateboard market, as the skateboard market had collapsed at the end of 1979, and we had been involved with buying and selling skateboards as our little business, we decided we'd buy the toy shop. We knew nothing about toys, but we did know about retailing, and we did realise that, you know, to make money on being a retailer, you had to have a little budget, and you bought things at one price and hopefully sold most of them at a higher price. And if that was enough profit, you were successful. So we kicked off with our first store. £35,000 was the turnover in the year before we bought it. £100,000 in our first year, £250,000 in our second year. 1985, we opened a second shop in Beaconsfield, again in Buckinghamshire. 1991, we opened in Slough. That was in the middle of a recession, and that enabled us as a family business to open our first store in a shopping centre, a store that was a part of an internationally owned shopping centre. That was always going to be difficult to get into because our covenant was really small. And that's, I think, a challenge for all businesses, to get from being relatively small to have a good enough covenant to be able to make that leap into the next growth phase. And then really over the years, we've just continued to open stores. We've survived many storms and battles, whether it be the financial crisis in 2008, whether it was COVID in 2020. All these challenges come that are not planned, and you wouldn't foresee them coming. But it's been able to flex with the market that you are actually trading in. So I guess the biggest breaks over the last 43 years, Woolworths going out of business in 2008 was a significant turning point. We had 42 shops at the time, and you could see Woolworths from the front door of 35 of them. So when Woolworths went out the high street, that left a huge opportunity. So in literally 16 years, we've gone from 40 odd stores to over 160 today. But I guess the biggest changes in the market over the 40 years have largely been the internet and in many ways, the fragmenting of people's spend, which leaves the high street in a significantly weaker position than it has been over the last 40 years. because the little bit that's left after people have spent their money on the internet isn't really enough to sustain the high street, which is why you're seeing closed shops up and down the country and many shopping centres in places like Aylesbury and others. They're just not surviving. They're not thriving. You can go to the regional shopping centres like Central Milton Keynes or Westfield London, Bluewater, Lakeside. Those centres, because they're drawing people in from a much larger area, they're actually doing really well. But a lot of the smaller local towns, local villages, those stores are really struggling. So a slight change of direction in the last 5 years, and that's where we started working with larger partners around the country who have excess space or don't have the specialism in toys. So our first venture was with Matalan. They had big stores and they had too much space and wanted to get into toys. So we partnered with them and opened 140 odd toy departments in their stores. We're currently trading with Marks and Spencer's. We have 35 toy departments in Marks and Spencer's. We partnered with Tesco's 2 years ago, which resulted in 2024 seeing the biggest growth in our company's turnover, as we've converted the space where Tesco's were selling toys into entertainer toy departments within Tesco's, and we've opened just under 900 stores, 900 toy departments this year. So our business is evolving and changing all the time. We're definitely not the business of 5 years ago, and we're not the business of 25 years ago.
Wow. And what's really been the driving force behind that change? Has it been others getting involved in the business? Is it a vision that you had for the business? How do you, I mean, there's such big decisions to make, aren't they? And how do you go about doing that?
Yeah. So we're still 100% owned by the family. We have 4 children, and our oldest 2 children, Duncan and Stuart, are both involved in the business. But the family's total involvement in the business has been changing over the last 5 years. We realised that as our business was growing, that some businesses, and I think I put myself in that category, you can outgrow your skill set. You know, we're entrepreneurs. We know how to do deals. We know how to buy things right. But as your business gets bigger, as your business gets more complex, it's really important that you put people around you that have either been where you're going or they have the skill sets to take you on that journey. So over the last 5+ years, we've been taking on senior external people onto our board, who've got all the different skill sets that we need, whether it be warehousing, IT, finance. And the last piece of our jigsaw puzzle was completed about 14 months ago when we took on a brand new CEO. It's just been transformational to have somebody that's really outstanding, who is really strategic working with you. So I'm probably not working quite full time now, but I'm not doing anything.
It's hard to put away when it's been your baby.
Well, the thing is, when it's your whole life, when it's 40 years of your almost all of my working life, to be honest, is quite difficult to give up. So as much as my sons would encourage me not to run reports, if you don't run reports, you won't know quite what's going on. But on the other hand, you won't be able to see what's going on, and you can't react to what you're seeing.
Absolutely.
It is a real challenge. But one of these days they'll take my computer off me, I'm sure, and then I won't get a look at what's going on.
No, well, it's an amazing time really in business, and I find this with my business too. You've got, younger people coming in to the company, who might be their first job, who have actually a better awareness of maybe the route to markets, understanding, what younger people want to see from a brand. And that's changed so much over the last 40 years. And I think to stay relevant, you have to listen to those people coming into your business, the younger generations, as well as, you say, the people with the experience who have maybe been there and done that before. And how many people do you employ, Gary? And what does that look like across your business in terms of the executive team? And how do you nurture them and nurture the culture to make sure you're all driving in the right direction?
Well, a lot of questions there. So our top team, led by our chief executive, um, is probably a team of about 10, 8 to 10 chiefs. So they are responsible for their different area of expertise. And then, no, it probably isn't that big. It's probably a team of about 6. And then under that team, we have directors that run the different departments, whether it be finance director or logistics director or marketing director, HR director. And then under that team, there's heads of departments. And then there's the teams under them. So that's like the head office structure. It's a bit like a pyramid in a way. And then we have a field structure headed up by our retail ops chief of retail operations. He's got a number of directors, one looking after partnerships, one looking after UK stores, and that's broken down into regional heads of region, of which there are 4. The country's broken down into 4 areas. And then underneath that, there are 18 areas. So there's 18 area managers. And then they have different people reporting into them, whether it be merchandising or risk. So there is a structure to the way that the company is set up, because it's impossible to run around the whole country doing everything. And the answer to your question on employment, we probably directly employ just over 2,000 people. We indirectly probably employ another 2,000, whether that be through third-party warehousing. This time of the year, we'll probably have 400 people working across 2 different warehouses. We probably take on another 400 Christmas temps up and down the country. And then we have merchandisers that go into Tesco's and help merchandise. So directly and indirectly, probably providing employment for about 4,000 people.
Absolutely incredible. And how do you drive the culture of the business to keep I suppose your vision and your family's vision for what you want from the entertainer? How do you, across that many people, make sure that's driven right through?
That's a really good question. I think when you are actively in the middle of the business, it's infectious. I think people experience it all the time. But if you do a little bit of scratching on the internet about the entertainer, we're very much a values-driven business. It's really important to us that we know the direction we're going in. We adhere to the sort of the guide rails that we actually put in place, how we behave as a business, how we behave as individuals. And our directly employed staff, it is much easier for that to cascade down through the different tiers of management. When somebody's more remote, so we do go and visit our warehouses. We do have staff, our member of staff that is embedded in those warehouses. But when those warehouses are operating completely independently, they'll pick up some of the bits of the culture of the entertainer, some of the values of the entertainer. But actually, it's really difficult when it's a third-party warehousing for us to be able to completely influence over everything they do. So I guess the entertainers probably most known for the fact that we don't work on Sundays. Our staff have Sundays off to be with their families. There are certain product categories that we choose not to stock. It's the sort of things I wouldn't buy for my grandchildren. If I wouldn't buy them for my grandchildren, I really don't feel comfortable in stocking them in our own shops for other people.
You're, I suppose, living and breathing those values every day. So they just, by natural osmosis, I suppose, across the business.
Well, and also a lot of those things, those values are embedded in our business. So, our CEO has a huge amount of freedom to make a lot of decisions in the business, but the things which he knows are really important to us as a family, like no working, not like certain products, those aren't negotiables. That's just the way that we do what we do. And then the other area that I think is worthy of discussion, but we're not the only generous company in Bucks or in the country, but I really believe that business can be a force for good. and generosity comes in many forms, but generosity largely, if you said to somebody, be generous, they say, oh, that costs money, and to some degree it does, and our local communities and our local society wouldn't operate if it wasn't for generosity, largely coming from businesses that work or their head office within the area. So I would think many businesses within Bucks are big contributors back into our local community in many, many different ways. A second way of being generous is generous with our time. And I do go into schools half a dozen times a year and speak to young people and encourage them to, I just say to them, you need to dream big dreams. If you don't aim high, you won't hit high. If you aim at the middle, you're going to hit low, because none of us never hit quite the spot. But when I say dream big dreams, I say, if you want to be an astronaut, you can be an astronaut. So just dream those dreams. But then what you probably need to do is to make sure you work hard, because the world owes us nothing. So if you don't work hard, nobody's going to give it to you on a plate.
Absolutely.
And then get good people around you. Just make sure you've got a mentor, make sure you've got people around you, encourage you, to cheer you on, pick you up when you get knocked down, because you will get knocked down. There'll be some that comes in a curveball that you hadn't thought of. Well, okay, that's not the time to give up. It's the time to get going again and pick yourself up and get going. And as I say, over the years, we've had more than our fair share of challenges. But there are always opportunities out there for people that are prepared to put themselves out and go and chase them.
Yeah, totally agree, and incredibly wise words there. And actually, on the subject of schools and actually giving something back to the community, and I suppose bringing it back a little to what Buckinghamshire Business First do. And whilst there's a huge amount of incredibly generous individuals and businesses that are making philanthropic contributions to society, and BBF, I find an interesting, since I've been part of it, it's almost a business philanthropy in terms of growing our local community in Buckinghamshire. And one of the amazing things that they do, as you know, is the Buckinghamshire Skills Hub and the Skills Show, and working with local schools. How do you see that benefiting businesses in the local community and getting messages across from local businesses to those children?
Well, the thing is, I think we're quite high profile because we're a shop and we're out there. But I think many businesses are sort of hidden behind the front door of their offices, or they're much more underground. And I think what the business fair, I took a young lad actually to a business fair. One of my employees' sons was about to leave school and hadn't got a clue what he wanted to do. And his dad said, look, if you come and pick him up, he might bother to get himself out of bed. You could take him over to the. So I took him to Aylesbury to this business fair, and I think what the fair does, it exposes young people to such a variety of opportunity, far more than just saying, a careers person saying to you, what do you think you want to do when you leave school? Well, you can come up with a few ideas, but they're very, very random. And I think what the business fair does, when the exhibitors are there, if you can inspire a young person that's in front of you, they're more likely to join you because they feel inspired by you than picking up a piece of paper and reading about what the job might be. So it's the variety of employees that are there from all different spheres of business that gives people choices to go home and start to consider what their future might look like. So it's very. I think what I'm trying to say is, it's a really concentrated place. Within 2 or 3 hours, you've just met such a massive variety. So I would encourage any local businesses looking to expand, and particularly if you're looking for younger people that you can train up and get them on the ladder of being successful. I think for those of us that have been in business and hopefully been successful in our careers, is passing the baton on for the next generation. So I love trying to inspire the next Gary, and getting I know, but we started with absolute nothing when we opened our first shop.
Yeah.
Um, and where you get somebody that is enthusiastic, is committed, they're there, and we've got, over the years, a lot of people must have just worked for us for a short while and moved on to something else. But we've got over 250 of our staff that have worked for us for more than 10 years. And I've probably now got 30 plus staff that have worked for more than 25 years, one doing over 40. So these are people that have stuck with us. They've seen me on a good day, they've seen me on a bad day, but they've stuck with us. They've developed their career. And most of those people wouldn't necessarily have joined with a bag full of qualifications. They just joined with a bag full of enthusiasm and commitment. And every young person out there has got some nugget of gold in them. And we just need to find out what that nugget of gold is and get it and plug it into the right place. And that's why I think the job fair is really, really important.
Yeah.
Because you need to inspire young people.
Absolutely. And you're a absolute prime example of a business born in Buckinghamshire. And I think the opportunity in Bucks, and there's 30,000 businesses in Bucks. Buckinghamshire is the land of the entrepreneur. We have more entrepreneurs in Buckinghamshire than anywhere else. So if you can't find inspiration at the Bucks Skills Show, I don't know where you can find it. But it really is wonderful to be able to show the youth of today what opportunities are out there, and the entertainer being one of those opportunities, and the many other businesses that we're lucky enough to have in Bucks. So in terms of looking ahead for the entertainer, what are the challenges and opportunities you see for retail on the high street, and maybe for your international growth as well?
There is always an opportunity. You can dwell on the downside, but there are always opportunities. So it was about 6 or 7 years ago that we bought the Early Learning Centre brand.
Yeah.
And that's given us now a bit of a springboard into a lot of our own product design and an exclusive product to the entertainer. Early Learning Centre being one, and the company we set up to source and develop the entertainer, the ELC brand, also makes a value brand as well called Addo, which is just outstanding value. So we've got like an Audi, and we've got a Skoda, all in the same building, so we can cover all different price points. Certainly developing the partnerships with the Tesco's and the M&S's and others, and there will be. So just literally in the last 6 months, we're now the toy supplier to Moonpig. So they're a completely only internet-based business.
Oh.
But when you go and now buy a birthday card or whatever card it might happen to be, you might buy, well, you not might buy, they definitely buy toys at the same time, because we're selling lots of toys. So it's using the skill set that we have and applying it to a market that's evolving. Because the high street, as I say, in itself is proving challenging. And just even the recent budget is just kicking the high street into touch, really, because I can see that over the coming months and years, we will probably end up closing a reasonable proportion of our stores because the business rates don't work anymore. They're not fit for purpose. The national insurance has gone up 1.5%. The minimum wage has gone up another 6%. So you've got some costs rising significantly faster than inflation. You haven't got turnover increasing in line with inflation at the moment. It's pretty tough. People are still figuring out how their standard cost of living is working, their income versus their outgoings, their electricity costs and other food costs are just running away. So people are having to remodel their expenditure with their income, and therefore that's affecting high street turnover. So therefore the only lever we've got to pull is just less jobs. So I think the tax on jobs that's recently been introduced will serve its purpose. I think there'll be significant unemployment in the jobs that employ lower priced, people with earning lower income, because they're the ones that have had the biggest increase. Now, obviously, if your minimum wage goes up, it does have a bit of a knock-on effect to other people in the chain, but not to the same degree. If minimum wage goes up 6, maybe other salaries might go up 3 to 4, but it's the bottom end that's really causing us a challenge. So we will actually have to figure out how to run our shops with less hours. We are researching to see how many self-service tills we can put in the shops now, because they don't have a minimum wage increase.
Yeah.
So,
Which actually, for your brand, the customer experience is such an important part of it. And I know my own personal experience of going in and bringing my children, and it's one of the reasons we love the Entertainer.
yeah. And I have to say to people, do you remember the toy shop of your childhood? And you mentioned that your parents brought you into an Entertainer all those years ago. And you say to a 6-year-old kiddie today, in 20 years' time, when they're 26, you say to them, "Do you remember the toy shop of your childhood?" And they say, "Yeah, it was a brown box came through the letterbox." Well, that's not how to buy a toy. A toy is an experience. It's a treat. It's a time out. And it's absolutely critical that we keep our staff levels to an acceptable level, but still manage to make the business model work for every unit. Because kids love running around. Parents are always looking for advice on the right toys to buy. It's really critical that you buy at the right age, because if you buy a toy that's relevant for an 8-year-old and you give it to a 6-year-old, it's just going to deliver disappointment. It's never going to spring out the box. I know every grandparent has got highly intelligent children, and they're always more advanced for their ages. But when you give toys to children that are just the wrong age group, they just don't have that fun. They won't bring that smile out.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds to me like you're striking a balance between trying to keep the high street alive and the customer experience, as well as, like you say, expanding into other areas to ensure all the business is strong.
Well, I often say that because I remember shopping as a kid in Amersham, when we had Browning's, the hardware shop, and I used to go to Sainsbury's that used to be in the middle of Amersham for groceries for my mum. We want to be an old-fashioned retailer in a modern world. And that's the best way of describing it, because people still want to be valued today. They want to come into a shop. You say, if you know their name, greet them by their name. It's just different things over the years we've learned. So if you go into an Entertainer and you're a 5 or 6-year-old, well, you can use them if you're older, but we've got little steps that take you up to the counter so that a child could be at the same level as a shop assistant. And when we're talking to children in the shops, we generally would kneel down and talk to them on their level. We just need to make sure that people feel comfortable in our shops, feel valued in our shops. We try and give them the best value we can give them. We give them the best range of toys. And because the business is in turnover terms, our buying power is really high. Where people think they can get it cheap on the internet, that's a fallacy. They definitely can't beat all of our prices on the internet. Somebody somewhere will be wanting to offload some stock, but generally speaking, on a basket of toys, we offer great value, and you can buy it in your local town. So use your local shops. Otherwise, as that slogan goes, you either use it or you'll lose it. And once a high street starts to slide, you end up with all these empty units. It has a halo effect on everybody else.
Absolutely.
So support your local community. That's the buzzword.
That's the message. I really love that. Well, just to sort of bring this to a close, Gary, because you've got so much advice and so much experience that all of our listeners can take so much from. What advice would you give to business owners listening who'd hope to achieve similar success with their businesses?
Okay. The advice I give them is probably not the advice I give myself, because as an entrepreneur, I'm quite used just to wing it. There's something in you. You've got a hunch, and sometimes you just got to go with a hunch. And someone said, "Well, we never planned that." I know, but we never thought that could happen. You just got to go with an opportunity. But what I would encourage people is put as much time into planning as you can. Planning is absolutely critical. You can change your plan, you can deviate from the plan, but you have to have a plan. You need to know the direction you're going. I think also in a market that's moving so quickly, knowing your numbers is critical. Making sure that you've got a really robust financial plan and understanding your numbers, because some companies making profits can go bust. and other companies making losses can survive, because it is all about the cash flow of a business. So there's certain things you just got to be on. You've got to be on those things. And then, as I say, you've just got to be looking for opportunities. How can you develop the things that you're good at? How can you diversify into other things? Seeing opportunities out there, putting wise people around you. As I said earlier, aim high. You'll only get out of life what you put into life. So throw yourself into it. And then whatever you do, just be generous with your business, because you can make a difference to so many people in our local community.
Wonderful. Well, I know I've taken a huge amount from just talking to you today, Gary, and a huge amount of inspiration to take to my business as well. So I hope that's the same for all of our listeners. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Talking Heads podcast. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.